Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Burnt Toast Show. This is going to premiere on March 15th, 2026, and that is, in fact, my 62nd birthday. So I thought I'd do this thing. Here we go. You may recognize that. I'm going to stop playing now so my station doesn't get taken down, or my channel. My channel doesn't get taken down. I know what I'm talking about, even though it seems like I don't. But anyway, that was My Favorite Things, John Coltrane's version of My Favorite Things. So I thought I'd go through and talk about my favorite things, my favorite records, in fact. So I thought we'd just sort of run things down. I had a little plan that I would actually not just showcase records, but like at different times, people had 2 or 3 or more that came out in a series where they were really on fire at that time. And I thought we'd look at some of those too. But we'll start off with some single albums that I just want to make sure that everybody remembers. First off, my favorite album, Miles Davis, Kinda Blue. Recorded in 2 afternoons in 1959. It was an incredibly innovative album at the time. People still listen to it. It's the best-selling album of all time. Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Cannonball Adderley, Bill Evans, Paul Chambers, and Jimmy Cobb. From 1959, just 5 songs. The CD had an extra version of Blue and Green on it. Is that right? Or Flamenco Sketches, one of them. Anyway, one of the slower songs. But there were only 5 songs on the original. I remember the first time I heard this album, I was 13 years old. I was in my room listening to Styx, Grand Illusion, and my father came upstairs. My father was a big jazz fan. And he said, "This is terrible. Here, listen to this," and handed me this album. And I thought, well, I'll show him. And I didn't listen to anything else for 6 weeks. I was completely enthralled with this album. And it's still absolutely brilliant. Miles Davis, Kinda Blue, the great one. All right, next we have another single album, Love Supreme by John Coltrane. Love Supreme. Recorded in a single evening, I believe, in December of 1964 at Rudy Van Gelder's studio in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. Rudy Van Gelder, they're still trying to get the sound that Rudy Van Gelder got in that studio for albums just in general. That was one of the things that Steely Dan would tell their engineers is try to sound like Rudy Van Gelder. So it's a concept album, 4 parts of one song, and I especially like side 1. But Love Supreme, John Coltrane on the tenor saxophone and the chanting, Elvin Jones on the drums and the gong, McCoy Tyner on the piano, who we just heard there on My Favorite Things, and Jimmy Garrison on the bass. John Coltrane, A Love Supreme. A Love Supreme. There you go. Next, one of the great albums, if not the greatest album of all time, the greatest live album of all time, Little Feat, Waiting for Columbus, recorded in London and in Washington, D.C. over a 4-night period, I think, in August of 1977. This is them at their peak. I know there were overdubs done, but Lowell George at his very best, the whole band at their very best. Lowell George, Bill Payne, Paul Barrere, Richie Hayward, Sam Clayton, Kenny Gradney. They were joined by the Tower of Power Horns, who we'll talk about here in a second. Waiting for Columbus. Side 2 especially. Just really incredible stuff. Waiting for Columbus. You better be writing this down. Next, Van Morrison, Moondance. Van Morrison, this was from 1970. Monumental album, especially the first side. And It Stoned Me, Moondance, Crazy Love, Caravan, and Into the Mystic. What an incredible side. But anyway, Van Morrison, he had done an album. He had a really hard time getting out of his contract with Bang Records. And when he did an album called Astral Weeks with jazz musicians that didn't sell very well. It's sort of looked at, depending on who you talk to, as a monumental album. But other people don't like it at all. But this one, he really hit his stride, trying to do more R&B and blues-oriented stuff, pop-oriented stuff. And what a great songwriter. He was an artist that had realized their potential. 1970, Van Morrison, Moondance. Let's see. I want to make sure that I include something from the Chris Robinson Brotherhood. I played a lot of them on the radio show back when I was on the radio, and just an amazing band. Neil Casal on the lead guitar, Adam McDougall on the keyboards, and there were two great drummers in that band. Tony Leone, who also played with Levon Helm and is currently the drummer with Little Feat, and George Sluppick. And Sluppick played with a little bit of everybody, Mofro and Robert Cray, were great drummers. And Chris Robinson was really onto something. I don't want to seem like I'm just playing old albums. Chris Robinson did a series of albums in the, I guess you'd call them the teens, the 20 teens, that were really amazing before the band broke up in 2019. This is an album called Servants of the Sun. Really great stuff. My favorite song on here is A Smiling Epitaph. At the end, A Smiling Epitaph. Really great song. Play that on the used to play it on the radio all the time. We've got other single albums. Tower of Power, Back to Oakland. Really great album. I don't know how that got out of there. The sleeves loose. But this is from 1974. And some really, really great stuff. The classic lineup with Lenny Williams on the vocals, Lenny Pickett on the saxophone, and David Garibaldi and Francis Rocco Prestia on the rhythm, as the rhythm section, drums and bass. Some really great stuff on here. Chester Thompson on the organ as well. Squib Cakes is on this album. Don't Change Horses in the Middle of the Stream. But everything on this album is really great. Tower of Power. If you're going to get one Tower of Power album, this is the one. Moving on. Gil Scott-Heron, Pieces of a Man from 1971. His first album as a singer. He had done an album as a spoken word album called Small Talk at 125th and Lenox before that as a poet. But because he wanted to be a writer. But it turned out he was a great singer as well, and songwriter. But this has such, the opening track is The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. But there's all sorts of great stuff on this album. A lot of his albums are terrific, but this is really the one. Bernard Purdie on the drums, Ron Carter on the bass. Of course, Brian Jackson, his longtime partner, on keyboards. Jimi Hendrix from 1967, he did two albums in 1967. This was actually released in 68, January of 68 in America, but it came out in December of 67 in Europe. And this is Axis Bold as Love, my favorite Hendrix. Used to be Band of Gypsies, but this one has really taken over. Great compositions, really, really creative stuff. And I don't know how he did it, because it would have seemed like, you know, coming right after the first album, how did he come up with all that stuff so quickly? But he did, and there's some really amazing stuff on there. On here, Little Wing is on this album, and lots of other great stuff. But anyway, If 6 Was 9. Jimi Hendrix, Noel Redding, Mitch Mitchell. Jimi Hendrix Experience. Of course, Sgt. Pepper. Concept album, changed music completely at that time. I think a lot of it came from this guy, Paul McCartney. Nobody's favorite Beatle. You're supposed to like John and George, I know, but Paul, I think, was really the instigator to the concept album and went a long way with the creativity, although you have to credit everybody else too. There's some amazing George Harrison, Within You, Without You, John Lennon. These are just amazing. And it ends with A Day in the Life with that giant chord. The Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band from May of 1967. Now we're going to look at a series of albums that people did. I've got two here from Joni Mitchell. Joni Mitchell's Court and Spark, where she started to work with jazz musicians. This came out in 1974 with Tom Scott and the LA Express. It was a breakthrough album for her. It had Help Me, the big single on it, and Three Men in Paris. And then the follow-up, The Hissing of Summer Lawns, which is equally good. Really great composing on this one. Went a little bit further outside, and she was going to go further from there on her next album, Hejira. She sort of capped that period off with this album, Shadows and Light, that came out in 1980, recorded in 1979. Live, Pat Metheny, Jaco Pastorius, Lyle Mays, Michael Brecker, and Don Elias. What a band. But anyway, Joni Mitchell's great jazz period. Next, I don't have Chameleon or Headhunters anymore, but Headhunters in 73 and then Thrust in 74 from Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters. Just a couple of really amazing albums. Most of the other fusion bands, Chick Corea's band, John McLaughlin's band, Joseph Zawinul and Wayne Shorter's band, they all sort of lean toward more of a rock direction in fusing jazz with something. Herbie went straight for the R&B and funk. That made him unique. Although George Duke and Billy Cobham kind of did too. But Herbie's was a little bit more pronounced. Huge selling albums, terrific albums, still stand up. Long tracks, only 4 tracks on each album, 2 on each side. Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters. Next, we're going to talk about the first 2 albums by the band. Music from Big Pink and just the Brown album, just called The Band. Just amazing albums. And Robbie Robertson's writing on these albums is just incredible. Levon Helm, just his drum sound on these albums is incredible. His approach to drumming. They had 3 great lead singers, Richard Manuel, Rick Danko, and Levon Helm. Garth Hudson with a completely unique approach to keyboards. The first 2 band albums from 1968 and 1969. Now, I'm still missing some of my, I don't know what happened to a couple of my Santana. I'm going to talk about the Santana spiritual period. Carlos Santana, after putting out 3 albums, decided that he was going to document his spiritual journey. He and Michael Shreve both got gurus. Santana with Sri Chamoy, and Michael Shreve with Swami Satchidananda. And they started with this one. This was definitely more in a jazz direction. Some of the original members of Santana still on this one, but they were kind of pushed out. Well, they weren't pushed out. They just went that one their direction. And then was Welcome next with the vocalist Leon Thomas, and they got into Flora Purim's on this. And then there was an album called Borboleta after that, which I couldn't find. I don't know where that is, but I still have it somewhere. But that was their spiritual period. I do want to mention the album Moonflower that came out in '77, sort of a tail end of this. They had already done a couple of R&B based albums, gotten really out of the spiritual thing, but there's some really killer playing on Moonflower as well. I do, before I forget, back here, Michelle Ndegeocello, Peace Beyond Passion from 1996, an amazing album. Speaking of spiritual, it's about a spiritual search and it's a serious, dark spiritual search album, and a lot of questions about religion as we know it and how it relates to someone in the 1990s who was both black and a lesbian. And so there were lots of questions that weren't answered in the Bible that she had a lot of concerns about. Brilliant album, very well written, lots of great guest artists. Her band was incredible at that time, but a couple of headhunters are on that. Joshua Redman, Billy Preston, David Fuzinski from Screaming Headless Torsos. Just an amazing album from 1996. Peace Beyond Passion by Michelle Ndegeocello. We're going to talk about the golden era from Stevie Wonder that started in 1971. Is it 71? I think it was 72, actually, early 72, Music on My Mind. He signed a new contract with Motown, giving him creative freedom. He started playing most of the instruments himself, although he did have Jeff Beck and Buzz Feiten on this album, which is really great. It's got Superwoman on it. This album, Talking Book, has Superstition on it. Ray Parker Jr. is on this. David Sanborn. Really great album. You're the Sunshine of My Life and Superstition, huge hits. He played almost everything on that album. Then we get to one of the greats of all time, Innervisions from 1973. All these albums won Grammys for Best Album. He was just on fire. At this point, he recorded most of this, recorded and wrote it when he was like 22 years old. Then we have Fulfilling, I don't know what that's about, but this is Fulfilling His First Finale from 1974. You Haven't Done Nothing and Boogie on Reggae Woman on this one. Really great album again, where he plays most of the instruments himself. And he capped it off with Songs in the Key of Life, a double album, very ambitious double album from 1976. That is a wonderful album. Herbie Hancock's on this, George Benson, Bobby Humphrey. Lots and lots of folks. I Wish and Sir Duke, Isn't She Lovely? Big hits off of this, huge album. After that, it was different for Stevie Wonder, but those albums are terrific, really terrific albums. Let's get into Crosby, Stills, and Nash, or Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. This first album, Crosby, Stills, and Nash in the wrong order. Crosby, Stills, and Nash, if you look at it from that angle. But huge hit, completely unique sound, really started the singer-songwriter thing, really, that gave birth to so many bands in the 1970s, sort of came out of this album. And then they followed up by adding Neil Young, and they did Deja Vu, and just really terrific albums. 1969, 1970, and that was pretty much it. There was a great album by Crosby, Stills, and Nash in 1977 called CSN that has them actually on a yacht, and so there's your yacht rock, but on a yacht on the cover, and so that one's worth checking out as well. And then we're going to talk about We're going to talk about two of my favorites. We'll talk about the Allman Brothers, two albums that came out, both double albums. This one's from 72 and this one's, or 71, and this one's from 72. Big chunks of both of these were recorded at the Fillmore in New York in 1971 in March. Let's see. Butch, Dickie, Barry, Greg, Duane, and J-Mo. The classic lineup. This is just an amazing album, sort of rewrote the jam band thing, one of the great jam bands of all time. This has got Elizabeth Reed and Whipping Post and Stormy Monday, Statesboro Blues on it, some real classics. And this one came out after Duane died, but they included some stuff that they had recorded with Duane, and they recorded more stuff, and they included more stuff from the Fillmore East sessions from March of 71. This one has, look at that inside cover, baby, yeah. This one has Mountain Jam, which covers sides 2 and 3, but it also has some really incredible compositions, Ain't Wasting Time No More and Melissa, Greg Allman compositions. It was the last album with Duane Allman on it. Really, really great stuff, both double albums. Now we're going to talk about Steely Dan, two albums that came out in the mid-70s when they had stopped being a band and started being more of a concept based around Walter Becker and Donald Fagen's writing. This one has become my favorite, although when I was younger, it was that one, Asia. This is from 1976, The Royal Scam. No hits off this one, but some really great songs. And just a plethora of great players. The rhythm section of Chuck Rainey and Bernard Purdie, really incredible. Larry Carlton on Kid Charlemagne in particular. Elliot Randall, Denny Diaz, some great guitar solos. John Clemmer on Caves of Altamira, and some really great writing, kind of science fiction based. I think they based a lot of this on some of William Burroughs' writing. And then we get to Asia, which is widely regarded as one of the great albums of all time. Sorry about the sticker, I'll put my thumb right there, my finger. But this is an album with 7 songs on it. Took a long time to record, and it was a huge hit. Deacon Blues, Peg, and what was the other one? Josie were the big hits off of this one. And just immaculate production, immaculate writing, immaculate playing. They sort of peaked out on this one. Some people really like Gaucho. I was not a fan of Gaucho when it came out. I'm still not. But on here, just the tracks Asia and Home at Last for me. I remember hearing Home at Last for the first time in October of 77, I think, on the radio, and just being absolutely blown away. Victor Feldman on the piano. So those are a few of my favorite things. See if this is still, well, we won't mess with that. But those are a few of my favorite things. It's my birthday, so thank you for viewing. I hope you, hope this brought back some memories, or you check some of these things out. Talk to you soon.